let's start doing it in this state. Let's get rid of the illegal vote in this state. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Hey, thank you very much. And Steve, if you want to come back up, then. Oh, there's wrong.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Steve Trout, State Election Director. I'm happy to be cross-examined or answer any further questions you have. I'll leave it to you, to the ones that you would like me to respond to.
Go ahead, Representative Garrett.
I just was wondering if you could briefly, on the specific question of the ballot destruction, and I think Ms. Bendel had made another suggestion about how you could accomplish the purpose of replacing ballots that are ruined or not machine readable. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Garrett, you know, the ballots are very specific, built for the voting system, and so they have to be official ballots to be run through with the timing marks and the ballot styles, so that the machine reading the ballots knows what the filled-in ovals represent. You know, to that point, I think she also raised the issue of potentially having different colored ballots for those duplicate ballots. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Obviously, there's a big cost associated with that to print in color, to print additional ballots, and anytime you have a small run of ballots, obviously the price is significantly higher to be able to cover that. And you know, we believe that the current excess ballots are all identified, serial numbered, as far as so that you can reference the duplicated ballot back to the original source ballot. That is adequate to protect, and it provides that paper trail and that documentation to be able to go back to the original source document at any point to be able to validate that in fact does represent the voter's intent. You know, the issue with the ballots is I understand there's a concern with, you know, in Multnomah County, it sounds like a large number of unused ballots. As an election administrator, the biggest error I can ever make is to run out of ballots. I mean, that is really what this comes down to. There is no county that can take that risk that they are going to run out of ballots. And when we're talking about the volumes that especially a county like Multnomah is running, you know, to run an additional run of ballots is you know, very small cost when you're talking about a large run of ballots. So could we go to some other, you know, a color base on the ballot for those ballots that are duplicated? Yes. Is it worth the cost? I don't think so, because I think there's enough security and process there to be able to identify those ballots and to be able to link back to the reference, the original reference document, the hand marked ballot of the voter.
Thank you.
Chair Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think to some degree in this area of destruction or not, we're putting you all in a lose-lose box, because if we directed you to destroy the ballots, then we would complain, oh, you destroyed my ballot. I voted, then you destroyed my ballot. But I'm intrigued. Ms. Deisinger suggested a potential middle ground, and you may have heard her suggestion. I'm wondering what you think about it, which is to kind of get away from the destroy or don't destroy option, and as she said, mandate that an exact count of all ballots be kept in a log. Related to the uncounted ballots, the uncast ballots. Is there an obvious problem, downside to that, or is that a potential happy medium?
No, Mr. Chairman, you know, that's one of many accounting methods that we have for those ballots. You know, come in and we know how many ballots are delivered from the printer. We know how many were mailed out. We know how many came back undeliverable. We know how many came back voted. We know how many envelopes came back. We'll have more empty envelopes than we'll have ballots, because some envelopes come back with no ballots in them, or a ballot, believe it or not, from the previous or two previous elections that the machine will then kick out. So there are many different scenarios here that the counties are faced with in counting ballots, and that's why there are multiple checks and balances and accountings that take place for all of these ballots to ensure that only those ballots that were cast are the ones that are counted. You heard a lot about the Multnomah County recount here this afternoon, and as you may note, that after the recount, the numbers came out exactly the same. So we have full confidence in the process. The entire point of this Section 4 of this bill is to provide for the security and the accountability of not just unused ballots, but all ballots that come across. That's what we really need to focus on. And I believe, as you said, destroying ballots actually lessens that ability to go back and to count and to account for the ballots. And so that's actually something that would be a step backwards with respect to security, accountability, and transparency. Because how many ballots did I destroy?
Representative Freeman?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, and I'll make this brief. And it's probably something you can send me, and maybe the whole panel would like to see it. My guess is around some of the discussion earlier that the ladies made on the recount, that you have some documentation. I'm sure this isn't the first you've heard of it. It's surely not the first I've heard of the problems, the perceived problems that occurred, like the lack of signatures and some of those things. Any type of information you have on what went on there and your take on it, I would sure appreciate seeing.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Freeman, so correct me if I'm wrong. So you're looking at any data that we have as far as those accounting purposes, as number of ballots accepted, those rejected, and for whatever reason, any stray ballots, those duplicated, is that the kind of data that you're looking for?
Follow up.
Yeah, including the protocol around signing the seal on the boxes.
Okay.
I find that to be a real curious situation, if that's in fact what occurred. That seems pretty basic for any sort of security function, is that there would be some kind of a mark or signature on those seals.
And Mr. Chairman, Representative Freeman, I'd be happy to talk to Multnomah County about that. And, you know, I know there are procedures and processes in place. Are they followed 100% of the time? I wish I could say yes, but the answer is no. But that's because we have so many people working there, but that's why there are so many checks to make sure that if something gets missed by human error, that there are multiple checks to be able to identify that so that we can go back and either explain or rectify that.
Last little quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
So in that situation, you might explain to me what the multiple checks were so that, you know, those folks that did pay for the recount have some understanding that what they were able to recount was actually what was originally in the box.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Representative Barnhart?
I think that Representative Freeman got to all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, Steve, I mean, you had a chance to sit here and listen to this just now, and I mean, to coin a phrase from the courtroom, evidence demands a verdict. So, yeah, if you could respond to some of what Representative Freeman said, we'd greatly appreciate that.
And Mr. Chairman, thank you, and it works the other direction too. We'd be happy to respond when provided evidence of any of these alleged improprieties. We take them very seriously. I appreciate the passion and the commitment to democracy that the previous witnesses have displayed. I share that, but until I have something in front of me that I can address, there's not a lot that I can do.
Okay. Thank you, and that's an affirmative. Okay.